Hey, good morning. It's Sunday morning in Sparks, Nevada. Sun is up. Thank you for your free energy this morning, girl. That's a female Merkaba. Six stargates. Yeah, the sun got changed out. Raise the energy. That's what we're doing. I'm going to cover a lot of stuff. Some of it's recap, some of it's redundant, even though higher density consciousness does not actually prefer to be redundant, which means that the data is always changing from what it was before because it's always new data. Okay? Or you can call it information, or you can call it energy, or you can call it an experience, and you can describe it, you can quantify it, and you can make a qualitative assessment based on the experience. It is data driven, if you want to think of it that way. The only reason, and I've mentioned this before, this was 10,000 years ago, we would use different methods of communication, but the message is essentially the same thing, which is how energy works. If you want to introduce a child, for example, to free energy and say, hey, look at the sun up there. See the sun up there? That's free energy, girl. Okay? How's that work? You want to learn how to be free energy? Okay, so sometimes when I think about the word teacher, sometimes I try and avoid the name teacher because it is triggered or linked to a memory-driven program that is fear-based and authority-based for the Daconis, which means, remember your first teacher? Okay. You are an empty slate, remember? Tabula rasa. I'm here to learn. What are you going to teach me? We're going to put information into that mind of yours, into that state of consciousness that you will experience the information, which is to experience the data. Now, you call me a teacher because I'm an authority figure. Okay, I got a paddle over here that if you misbehave, you're going to feel physical pain. Don't do that to me. That's fear-based programming. That's also time card programming, which means what we're talking about here is reaching critical mass. What is mass? Weight. The weight of the baggage. The weight of the element. The weight of the particle. The weight of the material. Right? It's pretty simple. Go look at a periodic table. I took a class once called, I hate to use the word advanced. Oh, what does this mean, advanced? Well, how advanced are you? Okay, that depends on your what? Density consciousness. The future? Advancing forward. I remember seeing and this is sort of how they do the inverted programming to get you to run in reverse. They're very slick, okay, on the way that they use numbers, letters, images, symbols, all that crap, right? So, for example, I saw an image of President Obama, okay, who was standing up at a podium, and it said, forward, forward. But his state of consciousness and the information that is represented by what they want to do is going in reverse. So what happens is they put information in our memory that we think is going forward, but the information that he represents is actually going in reverse, which is who they are. That's reverse programming. Okay? So now we're back to presentations. Okay? So when a teacher or a facilitator, and I was very happy, by the way, when I went through a graduate program in education at the University of Arkansas, they began to refer to, as a term, a label, a definition, okay, as a teacher, as a facilitator, a conduit of information-driven what? What does the information represent? The state of consciousness of the deliverer of that information. So now we're getting into something I saw earlier on a video. Are we wasting money going to college? Is it a total waste of money? Okay? Why is it even necessary? So when I put that through my hopper and spin it through my heart, which is my lighthouse, which is the neurotransmitters that are transmitting higher density consciousness throughout the entire morphogenetic field structure right now to reach critical mass higher density consciousness. Okay? Which means we're getting rid of the old data. All the data that represented all the memory-driven parasitic programming that the cabal, if you will, the New World Order group, okay, those that run on what I call dead light, which is dead spirit, okay, is going bye-bye, okay? So every morning I wake up, I'm getting more information, I'm getting more data that comes to me, and what I'm beginning to realize is we're accelerating the pace, okay, in which time clock-driven units of consciousness are going to begin receiving higher consciousness data-driven information. Okay, so now you can begin to think, you mean to tell me that the morphogenetic field structure of this planet can operate in real time? That's now time. That's what I operate on, is now time. But when you realize you're jumping into a time clock-driven classroom, in order for people to learn how energy works, how light works, how to attract more light rather than losing more light, we have to be willing to sort of come down. Remember I was mentioning about universal consciousness or eternal light, in which all that data is held, which is past, present, future simultaneously, which represents all these different timelines? Timelines are represented by the psychic energy or the state of consciousness that is using the energy of the cosmos to experience what it is and then sharing that energy with others. So what we do, which is what I did when I got here, was making, if you will, it really is like a tachometer. Okay? So you're measuring the speed between the speed at which you normally operate at, okay, which is real time, now time, okay, which is all there is, okay, which is what the light is that you're living in spirit. So that's living spirit. That's living light. Okay? So what happened to them? They kept losing light and losing light and losing light and losing light and losing light. And what happened? They lost all their light. And now they become spirit in darkness. What do they got to do now? How do they get their light back? Well, how do you think? Use logic. Logic. What do you think you'd be doing if you began realizing you're losing your light like crazy? Something's feeding on you. You better restore your light. That's what we represent. Living light. Living DNA. Okay? It's one of the advantages of being analog. Okay? It's because you can measure. Right? The tachometer. Hey, man. The environment we just jumped into with this spacesuit, we're measuring the speed of the waveform of communication here. Yeah. Hey, I'm not supposed to be experiencing these waves. I'm supposed to be experiencing the fastest possible wave of communication that is attainable. Because I want to be able to experience what? Everything that is possible to experience. Which is like saying, I want to cover the whole universe. I want to experience the whole cosmos. Every bit of it. I want to be able to overturn every rock and see what's there. Hey, where do you come from? Tell me about yourself. Let's be playmates. So you begin to realize you are what love is, wherever you are. You're experiencing what you are and sharing that with others. In living spirit. That's the simplicity of the cosmos. It's really not very difficult. Okay, it isn't. Particularly when you're around children. That's the magic of childhood. That's why child psychologists will call childhood magical. That's why the cabal wants to grab and kidnap children between the ages of 1 and 6. That's when they're the most vulnerable. Because they prey on the innocence of that energy. Because the purity of that soul, the purity of that spirit hasn't been contaminated yet. Of course, that's another measurement. Depending on what biosphere you happen to be in and how contaminated that particular biosphere has become as a result of what? Loss of light. which is loss of love, which is moving into darkness. So we experience the darkness. We experience the spirit that lives in darkness, which is evil, because they don't do things to serve humanity. Instead, they do things to what? Serve themselves. Because the only thing they care about is themselves. So we can measure that behavior and why we experience everything that we experience that is data-driven in a sense, because it could be numerically quantified. So we're shifting gears because I'm already aware of how much information transfer is taking place because I'm measuring the speed at which that information is being experienced by other units of consciousness. Okay? i.e., Robert David Steele. I listened to a video last night with Carrie Cassidy. This was sort of the second time that I listened to it, but I listened to the entirety of it. Okay? Robert David Steele mentioned something very important, and I wanted to make sure that I covered this. Okay? Data integrity. How do you know whether you can trust the data? Which is the same thing as trusting someone else who's giving you data, which is giving you information, which is represented by the waveform communication that is sending it to us, the receiver. Okay? So in other words, we're calibrating or we're translating the energy of the communicator, the presenter, to us. So when the light is here in force, it's easy to expose the darkness because we know they're lying, because that's what they do. The only way that they can maintain what it is that they are and continue to feed on the light is by lying, cheating, kidnapping, murder. And they come up with every deceivable trick that you can possibly think of because they operate on the opposite side of the spectrum. See, in their mind, the darker they are, the heavier the density, the more they like it. That's self-indulgence and perversion of the natural order of the cosmos. That's why they do things that are unsane. A sane person would not do what they do. Okay? Because sanity in the cosmos is at a bare minimum of, again, another data analysis, another measurement. What are you doing with your energy? It is true, the golden rule. What I do to you, I do to me. Because if I do something to hurt you, I will experience what that did to you. I will experience what you experienced as a result of what I did. So if you're an empath and you care about others, and let's say, for instance, you're holding on to something that is lower density consciousness as a result of a prior experience that you couldn't dissolve or burn off, okay, that as a result of that lowers your frequency, lowers your density consciousness, and as a result of that, you're not aware of the future of what? The potential. The electrical potential of the communication in the light. So if you're not able to realize, hey, if I say this or if I do this, I might cause somebody some harm. I don't want to do that. And that means you're aware of the impact of a potential. So you don't want the potential to be realized, because otherwise, if you do what it is you're thinking or something that you act upon that causes somebody a loss of energy, you're going to lose the energy. Because you're going to experience the loss of your own energy as a result of the loss in theirs. That's how you learn. You begin to realize, I'm losing energy, I'm not gaining energy. So when you look at the sun, you begin to realize, well, how did it get so much energy? By attracting more light. By learning how to go faster. Now it's pulling so much light, which can be measured in heat. British thermal units, if you will. Okay, remember, I forget exactly how that is. I believe it's the temperature, the rate of temperature in which 1 gallon of water or 1 pound of water is raised one unit. It's another mathematical measurement. Okay, So you can measure essentially what is known as heat transfer. And in firefighting we call it convection, conduction, and what's the other one? Radiation, radiating, like in radiation decay, like decay in your teeth, right? When you're having decay in your teeth, radiation decay. Okay. What's the best way to prevent decay in your teeth? Being more magnetic. It prevents the penetration of your shield. That's why coconut oil, for example, using it as a mouthwash is very effective. It's called a pull. You pull all the lower frequency junk out of your gums and stuff like that, because your fingers naturally from time to time will touch your lips or whatever, particularly if you're eating food in which you're using your fingers to do it with versus a wooden utensil. I prefer to use a wooden utensil versus a steel utensil. When you begin to realize all the things that we use and the manner in which we use them in relation to how energy transfer takes place, which is data transfer, which means you're experiencing the data. Now we're back to data integrity and Robert David Steele. So one of the things that I posted on that particular conversation took place between Robert David Steele and Carrie Cassidy, which runs, if you will, a disclosure website or disclosure channel in which for, I don't know, maybe 10 years, I think, the first time that I ever was prompted to go look at all her data. See, the way it works for me, and this is very simple to describe, is every single moment, which is a present moment, I'm accessing essentially or experiencing that moment. When you realize the timeline that you're on and why you're on the timeline that you are, which is to reach critical mass of higher density consciousness within humanity, okay, then you know that when you are accessing data, you're only needing to access specific pieces of data, because a data is linked to another piece of data, to another piece of data, to another piece of data, to another piece of data. So we're experiencing the data that is in the energy field, okay? So it's like your state of consciousness is part of the whole fabric, which represents the morphogenetic field structure and what everybody is experiencing simultaneously, but at different speeds. So if we reach critical mass, it means we're raising the speed at which we're able to communicate with everybody here, okay? Because everybody's raising their density consciousness to a rate at which we're all realizing we're dissolving everything that is below what we were experiencing, which represents lower density consciousness. Now we're in a higher state of consciousness, which means we're losing the memory of the other programming, okay? Which means ending the fourth world. Now you move into what's known as the sixth sun that the tribes talk about, okay? Which means this is a new world, okay? Which means we're going to experience higher density consciousness, which means we're going to be using data in such a way that it serves all of us. So that's one of the reasons why, in a sense, even though I don't even know if Robert David Steele, I don't know what his bloodline is, I don't know what clan he belongs to, I don't know whether he's tribe or whatever. But what I do realize, and one of the reasons that I access him, is because of the people that he uses and he puts on his show to sort of see where we're all going. And it's sort of a measurement that I use, okay, for everybody that's on the planet. Because he's plugged into other people that work in the intelligence sector, which is the data collection center. When I realize that he's beginning to experience the data that I am, then I begin to realize that he's rising with us. It means the speed at which he becomes aware of what he is aware of is matching the speed at which the data transfer is taking place, which is nothing more than information, which is represented by energy, which is represented by the speed at which you're experiencing who you are, okay? Which is a higher state of consciousness, because now the amount of data that you're aware of is more data than you were aware of before. Okay? So this way we can measure it another way, which means we realize that the success that we're having against the dark, taking down all of their demonic technology communication systems, is being leveled, destroyed. taken down, dismantled. Okay? So when that's happening, we can correlate the difference in what we experience as a result of what we're doing in that case. Okay? That's one of the reasons why all my stuff gets blocked. Okay? That friend of mine I mentioned the other day wasn't able to access Rose Sweet, which is my YouTube channel. So why would YouTube itself not want to, when he punches in Rose Sweet, doesn't my YouTube channel doesn't pop up? YouTube does not want anybody to experience what it is they're experiencing through the data that I'm sharing with you. Because YouTube, the creators of YouTube, those that run YouTube, do not run higher density consciousness. Okay? They're not aware of the amount of data that we're aware of because it's infinite. Infinite data is infinite experiences, which is infinite light, which is living spirit that lives in eternal light. Because the energy that we use to experience who we are, that we share with the cosmos, is what love is as a minimum frequency. That's why when I was a child and I began to realize, hey man, what happened here? What in the hell am I doing down here? This is like nursery school. So you begin to realize when you're putting all the data together, because that's what we do, to explain what? The underlying causality. How did higher density consciousness end up in lower density consciousness? That's not our home. That's the good news. So this, in a very big way, is good news. And it's like I told Robert David Steele the other in one of my posts. And I've said this to a lot of children that I meet from place to place. Everybody has a reason, actually, to celebrate what's happening. Okay? Because you're experiencing the liberation of this planet from lower density consciousness. That's consciousness that wants to hold you captive. And the reason it wants to hold you captive is because it wants to feed on you. Because it doesn't know how to give anything back. That's what a corporation is. Okay? When everything is for-profit driven, then it has an interest to keep doing what? Harvest more electrons. Harvest more of everything there is. Because then they can use that to become more powerful. Now they can control more stuff. That's like an Energizer bunny without an off switch that is consuming resources and harvesting energy, okay, one world after another. And it doesn't have an off switch. That's whack-a-mole. Okay? That's why it all has to be dismantled and taken down. Okay? They don't give anything back. In their own statutes, in their own bylaws, they are forbidden, okay, from giving anything back. So that means that they are driven by one thing and one thing only, making money. And how do they do that? Convincing us we can't do without them. Okay? And so what happens is that that's why they want to put small businesses out of business. They want to control everything. They don't want somebody who runs a small business who's highly creative, has an enormous amount of intuition, that come up with something that's gonna blow the socks off everybody's door. Like building a starship that can take you anywhere in the universe, for example. Okay? They don't want that to go out. If they're not making something like that, they don't want humanity to be able to experience something like that. So what do? They go and kill the inventor. That's sort of the illusion with the copyright and patent, which means they control what we all experience. That's why copywriting something, okay, and thinking in terms of private property, it belongs to me. That sun is giving you free energy, okay? We do not hold energy captive, okay? So you can't own the girl on the planet, okay? Because she's the girl that does the physics in the planet. I don't know about you, but every morning I wake up, I thank her for everything she gives me. For one more day of sunshine. Thank you very much. because that's free energy. So when you learn to become the reflection of the teacher in the classroom, which is who she is, now we're learning. And that's why, in some degrees, it sort of upsets me a little bit when even in all these conversations, when all this data is being, how do I put it, transferred, now you're learning more about the underlying causality of why we're experiencing everything we're experiencing, and she's left totally out of that conversation. And how anybody can do that is beyond me, but they do. Which is, again, another translation of who they are and who we are. Because it's just like Patty Broussard said, 2 out of every 3 people that you meet are not Homo sapiens sapiens. They're aliens. Or they're cyborgs, or they're androids, or they're artificial intelligence. But they are not native tribe and clan to this realm. Okay, which is living spirit. Which means our spirit is bonded and connected and anchored to the great living spirit of Mother Earth in this planet. That's how you know whether you're native or not. Is whether you have a spiritual communication relationship with her. Which means we honor her, which is why we honor the matriarch. That's simple stuff. So I'll leave you with that to think about for the day. For those that choose to watch this video, what I can say, and this is great news, the density consciousness on this planet, because of what I'm aware of, is accelerating at a very high rate of speed. And if I know that, I know that Donald Trump knows that. Everything that I share with you, I figure Donald Trump is aware of this stuff. Okay? Take a look at all the war criminals. What's his name? Mitt Romney, for example. Okay, was buddies with this guy named, what's his name? Carlos Salinas, who used to be the former president of Mexico. Mitt Romney was nothing more than a member of a communist organization, a cartel. He was hanging out with a Russian KGB agent. So anyway, that's one of the reasons why I love Veterans Today. And I love Public Intelligence Blog with Robert David Steele, because he's not afraid to tell you the truth when he accesses data. He's an intelligence officer. So he loves to consume data. I want to learn more about more data. The more data that I can process, okay, the better. And that's what he's doing. So he's sharing all the data that he is experiencing. And he's experiencing a lot more data. Now he's sharing all that data with others. And that's what we do. A facilitator of information, of knowledge. Ancient spiritual knowledge. Math and physics do underlie spiritual science. What it means to be living spirit. Living in the light, and we share that light with everyone. And it's free. Because the more free that it is, the more we keep getting, which is we're simply getting back more of what we are. And that's a simple equation. That's how she became a female Merkaba. Look how big she is. That's a lot of energy. How about the girl on the planet? Think about a knowledge transfer from her. A data transfer from her. Learning through all of her data that she shares with us. You get it? Have a great day.